Welcome, dear listeners. Picture a serene morning by a quiet Norwegian lake where the stillness is broken by an alarming sound, a scream that echoes across the water, drawing attention to a mysterious disturbance below. What begins as a peaceful getaway quickly spirals into an extraordinary tale of bravery, a family in peril, and an unexpected encounter with a creature that doesn't belong. Stay with me as we unravel a story of courage, compassion, and the unlikeliest of rescues. I can't believe it. Is this for real? Look over there. There are circles in the water. John could not believe his eyes. What was supposed to be a quiet holiday in Norway was suddenly interrupted by the frightening sight of massive circles appearing in the water. The guests of the hotel were in shock. People started screaming and quickly grabbed their phones to record this scary phenomenon. What was causing these circles? Before we start, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. It was around 9 on a Sunday morning on the deck of a small hotel in a quiet Norwegian town. It was never very busy there, and this day was no different. The few guests that were there were enjoying the view while eating breakfast. But then, the silence was interrupted by a loud scream from the other part of the lake. John, one of the hotel guests, immediately got up to find out if he could see what was happening. John walked to the water, his dog and a few hotel guests following him quickly. While John was looking to the other side of the fjord to locate the source of the scream, the other guests noticed something very different. They started pointing at some very big circles that had started forming in the water. Then they heard a second scream. John spotted the location of the screams. It was quite far, but he could see that there were 2 kids on the other side, and it seemed they were in trouble. Finally, John noticed the circles in the water as well. What had happened? Could there be another kid in the water? John knew he had to take action. While he had taken this vacation to finally rest after a bad burnout, he knew this would not be a day of relaxation. John ran inside the hotel to ask the owner how he could reach the other side of the lake quickly. But what exactly was happening on the other side of the lake and what was in the water? A few hours earlier, Eric, 42, a father of 2, went on an early morning hike with his 2 children, Bjorn, 9, and Anna, 7. He often took them out into nature to teach them about the forest and because they both loved exploring so much. But this day, it seemed that everything that could go wrong did go wrong. After an hour of walking and climbing, Eric had to grab his map to see if they were still going in the right direction. While he was standing with his compass and his oversized map, Bjorn and Anna decided to go exploring on their own. When Eric finally figured out where they had to go, he looked up and saw that he had lost Bjorn and Anna. While Eric was busy with the map, Bjorn and Anna had spotted a little trail that led to the water. They figured their father would easily find them, so they left without telling him. They started walking towards the path, but it was very steep and slippery. They decided to hold hands to support each other, but then Bjorn lost his grip and fell, dragging Anna down with him. This was when they first screamed. When Eric heard the scream, he realized which direction they had gone and quickly started running toward the sound. At the exact same spot where Bjorn and Anna had fallen, Eric also slipped and fell right next to them. The water was just a few meters below them, and if they had fallen a bit more, they would have ended up in the water. But when they looked down into the water, Anna started screaming again. Meanwhile, on the other side of the lake, John had just heard from the hotel owner that the best way to reach the other side of the fjord was by boat. Luckily, the old man had an old boat in his shed, but they needed to prepare it quickly. The boat was quite heavy, so John shouted for help. A few hotel guests came to help carry the boat to the water. John felt like they had no time to lose and urged everyone to hurry. After a few minutes, the boat was in the water and the engine was attached. However, a new problem arose. When John tried to start the engine, nothing happened. He quickly removed the fuel cap and found out there was no fuel in the boat. While someone else held the boat in place, John ran back to the hotel owner to ask for a jerry can of fuel. The hotel owner, however, had some bad news. He had no jerry can with fuel. John had to improvise. Luckily, the old man had a long tube and a bucket, so John quickly ran to his car to extract some fuel from the gas tank. This process took him longer than he had hoped, but at least he was finally ready to go to the other side. Meanwhile, on the other side, Eric and his children were trying to find a way back to the path. However, they couldn't climb up, and going down was not an option either, as they had just seen something in the water that they wanted to stay far away from. They started to calm down as soon as they saw the boat with John coming closer. Since it was a pretty small boat, John had decided it would be best if only he and his dog went to the other side in case there were more people to save than he anticipated. The fjord was not too big, so it shouldn't take too long to reach the other side. However, the suspicious circles in the water made him uneasy, so he gave it everything he had to reach the other side quickly. John shouted to Eric, "Do you speak English? Are you guys safe? What happened?" With a heavy Norwegian accent, Eric responded, "Yeah, we're okay. We just need to figure out how to get out of here." John said, "You have to jump in the water. It is very deep. Then I can get you in the boat." But when Eric told this to his children, Anna's eyes widened and she walked away from the edge. She was scared. She told her father, "Daddy, haven't you seen the big monster in the water? I can't jump in there." "Big monster?" he replied. "What are you talking about?" Then they looked into the water again, and now Eric turned pale as he finally understood what Anna was talking about. While Eric was very scared of the big creature they saw swimming in the water, he also knew they had to get into the boat or they wouldn't get away. So, when he saw the creature had moved a bit further, he threw his bag into the boat, grabbed Bjorn and Anna, and took a big jump into the water. It seemed that everyone had calmed down, but halfway across the fjord, John's dog started barking. John slowed down and tried looking around to see what his dog was reacting to. Meanwhile, Anna moved closer to her father and whispered, "Daddy, I'm scared. Is that the big creature?" Then John finally saw something huge moving in the water, and his mouth fell wide open. A moment later, John heard a big bang, and the boat was lifted slightly. Everyone screamed, and John's dog barked loudly. John moved to the side of the boat, looked in the water, and finally saw what had hit them. He looked a whale right in its eyes. The whale had hit the boat's propeller and had a pretty big wound on its head. Not only was the whale hurt, but the boat was damaged as well. The engine wouldn't start again. Bjorn and Anna were panicking. A big whale was attacking the boat, and the boat was broken. How could they get away? Luckily, John had brought some oars, which he and Eric used to row the boat back to the hotel. Meanwhile, the whale had moved a bit further from the boat, but it kept putting its head above the water. John couldn't help but think that the whale needed help. It shouldn't have been there in the first place. But how on earth could they even try to help the whale? Eric told John he had only seen a whale this far from the sea once before, and that time the whale unfortunately didn't make it back and died. John knew this time had to be different. He told Eric they had to come up with a plan to save the whale. Eric immediately started calling some friends who might help. They made a list of things that needed to happen. First, the whale needed medical help and food. Otherwise, it wouldn't survive for long. Then, they would have to find a way to guide the whale back to the sea safely. After writing everything down, John said, "I think we can actually pull this off. Let's start right away." While Eric called some friends to come over and help, John started calling medical organizations that might assist. They planned to go back to the whale the next morning when the doctors and medical specialists arrived. The next morning, when everyone had gathered, they finally went to the whale to see how they could help it. The specialists found out it was a very young whale, and luckily it was quite calm. They administered antibiotics and treated its wound. They said it would take a week before the whale would be ready to be moved toward the sea. A week later, they all gathered again to start guiding the whale back to the sea. John had stayed at the lake the whole week to watch over the whale. Luckily, it was now strong enough to start swimming back. They gathered the boats, but what if the whale hit a boat again? Luckily, the rescue team had thought of that as well. They had attached big steel bars around the propellers so the whale wouldn't be hurt by them again. Now, they could start moving it back. Luckily, the whale followed them quite easily, and in just a few hours, the whale had returned to the sea where it could look for other whales.